So I'm going to start off with a little bit about me. I normally wouldn't do this because I don't find it quite as interesting as the rest of the content, but I want to give some context to my experience with remote work and how that impacts some of what we're going to talk about down the road. So I'm an Android developer at Udacity. I work on the mobile engineering team there. And for the last 2 years, I've been fully remote while working there. Now, the company is based in Mountain View, California, but I am currently based in Seattle, Washington. And actually, during my 2+ years there, I have actually lived in 4 different cities in 3 different states. So I've actually taken full advantage of being able to remote, not having to change jobs every time I move to a different city, which has been really amazing for my family and for flexibility. So I really like working remotely. And I'm not the only one on my team that does this. In fact, that is the majority of our team. So the mobile team at Udacity is 75% remote. We're spread across 2 different continents, 3 countries, and 4 different time zones. So we have had to really work over the past couple of years to improve our workflows, to learn how to communicate effectively and how to stay engaged as a team so we can continue to build quality products for our students. And so part of the reason we're going to talk about remote today is because remote work sounds great. When you tell people that you work remotely or that your company supports it, a lot of people immediately think that that sounds amazing. They say things like, oh, you must just work in your pajamas all day, you must lay in bed and work all day, or sit on the beach, and they just really think that it sounds amazing. And a big part of this, I think, is because it really is amazing. It can be, at least, if it's done correctly. But that doesn't necessarily happen by accident. So that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. And for a little context here, remote work is increasing in popularity. By a recent Gallup study showed that 60% of companies offer some form of telecommuting to their employees. In a recent study as well, 37% said that they would change jobs if it meant that they could work wherever they wanted to. And then 11.5% year-over-year increase in fully remote programmers. So all these numbers are starting to trend upwards over the past 3 or 4 years as more and more people are sort of embracing the desire to want to work remotely, and companies are allowing it. But all of this success in a remote team, the flexibility, the freedom, it doesn't come for free. And so we're going to look at this question today. How can teams work effectively when they're spread across different locations, spread across different time zones, and you're not face-to-face in an office together every day? And I think it requires a number of things. This won't be an exhaustive list, but some of the things that I think are really important and maybe aren't quite as obvious. But it requires trust. If you're not face-to-face every day, you have to just implicitly trust that people are going to be doing the right thing, that they're going to be productive, and that can take a little bit of time, and it might have to mean changing a mindset where you can't necessarily have direct observation from managers to their employees on a daily basis. If you're remote, obviously you're going to have to communicate. We have to communicate even when we're co-located, but it's even more important when that is the only interaction you have, whether that's Slack, video, etc. And then you have to be engaged. You have to work extra hard to keep people invested, to keep them active and engaged with your company, with their project. And then to make all of this work, you really need proper tooling and technologies available to your employees, to your organization, so that you can communicate, you can build products, and that this whole idea of remote working actually works. So we're going to take a look at benefits and challenges of remote teams. We're going to look at communication strategies, how to keep engaged, and then finally at the end we'll do a little bit of preemptive Q&A with some of the common questions that I or people on my team get repeatedly when talking about how our team works. So to start this off, I want to answer this question, what is a remote team, more specific to the context of this discussion? So email and chat from a mobile device. Is this remote working? And in a very strict sense, I would say yes. As mobile developers, probably all of us at some point have sent a Slack message or an email or looked at a pull request or done something work-related on a mobile device. Mobile work or remote work could also be considered, working from home once in a while. We saw that statistic earlier. 60% of companies are offering telecommuting opportunities. So this could be that. Maybe the company policy is you can work from home 1 day a week. Or maybe you have everybody in an office except for one person that was just too valuable to let go, so he was made a special exception to be able to work wherever that person wanted. So all of these are valid ideas of remote work. We probably all either know somebody that falls in this category or fall into one of these categories ourselves. So in some sense, we've all worked remotely. But for the sense of this talk, the definition of remote work is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit stricter. It's going to be a remote-first team. It's going to be a team that is spread across different locations or maybe even different time zones. They're not co-located. And then it's a team that has policies and technologies in place to really enable all of this. And we'll see that this particular stricter definition of remote, this is also increasing. From 2012 to 2016, seeing a 5% increase in the number of fully remote programmers as well. And the reason for this distinction between some of those other more lax definitions of what is remote work is because in all of those other cases, it's much easier to let things slide. You don't have to have technologies in place. You don't have to have policies in place, because if you have a bad experience working from home 1 day a week, it's not a big deal. There's no forcing function there to ensure that everything needs to be smooth and as productive as possible when you're in that remote state. So it's easier to let those things slide, and it's not a true sense of what it can mean to work remotely. So why go remote? Why would organizations want to allow this? Why as an individual might you want to work remotely? Well, there are a lot of benefits to it. In Buffer's recent State of Remote report, these were listed as the top benefits for individuals that want to work remotely. See, flexible schedule, more time with family, travel. There's a lot of really nice benefits there that are wonderful for both work but also the personal life. And so one of the first key ones I want to look at is just time. So we have 53% of workers in the recent Gallup survey saying that work-life balance is very important to them, one of the most important things, which is not that surprising. We all want work-life balance. With that then comes less travel time and less expense. If we're working remotely, we don't have to commute. We can stay at home, so we're getting nice benefits there. Less travel time, less commute time means more time with family and friends, more time for hobbies, for other stuff, so we can stay refreshed and more engaged and productive during the time that we are working. Flexibility is huge when working remotely. You might have flexible hours because not everybody is co-located. There's now no assumption necessarily that everybody is always right there at their desk because you can't verify that. So it tends to enable more flexible working hours. You obviously have a flexible location, but flexible location can really mean a few things. This can mean both, where are you actively working today? Are you working from your home office, from the couch, from a co-working space or a coffee shop? This also can mean where actually, geographically are you? Are you in a big city? Are you in a rural area? Are you traveling? You have the flexibility to move around. This then comes with the huge benefit of you can find a place where cost of living is more attractive to you. Maybe you want to live in the big city. Maybe you can't afford to live in the big city or just want to live somewhere else smaller. With remote work, you don't have to be tied to the specific city where maybe the attractive jobs are to you, which is then huge. I've taken advantage of multiple times. If you want to move to a new location, that does not automatically mean that you have to get a new job. This lets you plan your life in a way that is more flexible and more beneficial to everybody involved and not strictly plan everything around your career. And finally, productivity. Individuals that are working remotely can often be much more productive for a few reasons. One being that you have control over your working environment. If you are someone that is much more introverted, you may not want to work in a big, busy, open office. You may work better in a single office or at home with the door closed and the curtains drawn, very quiet and isolated. You might also be someone that's really, really social, but your company's office is very quiet and isolated. Everyone's in cubicles, and you might want more social interaction. So with the flexibility of remote work, you can choose the situation that works best for you. So this might mean fewer distractions, could actually mean more distractions if that's what works best, but ultimately this can lead to you entering a flow state more often and staying in there longer. And if we can get into that flow state, then we can be more productive. And there was a recent study by Harvard, I believe, that showed in factory that 10 to 15% increase in productivity was found just from simply putting a divider between a manager and the worker. So it has been shown in other industries that productivity does in fact increase when you're not being directly observed as often. And so this was a stat from the Buffer survey as well that I found particularly interesting. 90% of remote workers say they plan on working remotely for the rest of their careers. And that's a huge number. And this was a rather large size. I can't remember how many people were in this study, but it wasn't trivial. And so this shows really how much remote workers really enjoy that flexibility, the productivity, and just the lifestyle and freedom of being able to work remotely. And I can say that I fall into this category as well. If given my choice, I would love to continue to be remote. But there's benefits for the organization and the team as well. So we have lower costs. Fewer employees in the office means you don't need as much office space. Office space is expensive, so they can save money there. You also have a larger talent pool. If you're no longer specifically hiring locally, you can open that up global if you want, or across the entire country. You have a lot more people to draw from. This then has the benefit of added diversity. If you're in Silicon Valley, you're cutting out a lot of people that can't afford to live in Silicon Valley. So if you can hire someone in rural America or in another country, you now can find the right people for your job regardless of where they are, regardless of where they want to live. And I think this can have benefits on retention as well, because now again, people don't have to plan their entire life around their career and their job. They can be free to move if they want. They can stay where they are and still get that job that is perfect for them and matches what they want to spend their time doing. And so this can lead to happier employees. Happier employees tend to stay around longer, which is another added benefit and honestly a lower cost for the organization because you're not having to rehire and retrain people. Easier meetings, easier scheduling. This is actually something that was a little counterintuitive to me at first, but actually in hindsight I think makes sense, at least for our team. When we are all co-located, when we have team on-sites, if we want to schedule a team meeting, we have to find an open meeting room for it. We have to gather everybody up there, schedule it, actually physically go to the location, like have the meeting. If the meeting is going long, we often get kicked out. We have to go find a new space. There's actually a lot of friction there sometimes when trying to schedule a more impromptu meeting. When we're remote, we simply pull up a Slack group, hit the call button, send a Hangout, send a Zoom link. It's really, really easy when you're remote and everybody is remote to immediately jump on a call with people and start interacting without all of that extra overhead. And then if your employees are more productive, it stands to reason that your team and your organization is going to be more productive. And so all of this so far probably sounds pretty nice. There's a lot of benefits here, but it doesn't come for free. There are challenges as well that if you don't account for it, if you don't actually try and make improvements in these areas, this fully remote team is not going to work out for you. So first one at the organizational level is you need to support remote workers in a first-class way. So you need to invest in supportive technologies. So maybe that's video conferencing software, chat software, planning software. You need to make sure that those tools are available and going to work consistently. You also want to have clear policies and expectations in place. If you allow people to work remotely on a case-by-case basis, it's not clear when you can work remotely or why some people get to and others don't, it's not going to work for everybody. It needs to be clear and consistent across the board. Same with things like core working hours, which we'll talk about later. There should be policies there so there's not confusion around what the expectation are of if I'm going to be in the office. Can I work remotely and travel at the same time? You need to work all of that stuff out so everybody's on the same page. And then again, like I mentioned before, you have to trust at the organization level, down to the team, the individuals. You have to trust that people are going to be doing what you hired them for, that they are bought into the mission, and that are working productively to build a great product, even if you can't actively watch them doing it. If you're going to hire remotely and take advantage of this large hiring pool, you're also going to have to sift through a much larger pool of candidates. You might have 5 times as many, 10 times as many resumes to sift through, and this is a challenge that will take time, might take extra money. You're also going to have to learn how to screen a more diverse set of applicants as well. If you are now opening this up and looking at people from all over the world or all over the country, those resumes might start to look different. And you might have to rethink what you're screening for, what your job postings are looking for, so that you can attract these people from all over. And also, you're going to have to select for remote-friendly traits. Communication is extra important. Being a self-starter, being someone that can break down tasks and move around blockers on their own without always being able to immediately get a hold of someone are all really important traits that are probably even more important when you are remote. It's challenging to engage with your team when you're remote. So things like full team communication do become harder. Like I said, if everybody's remote and online, you can immediately jump on a call, but not everybody is always right there and online. Maybe someone's running an errand, maybe they're in the bathroom, so you have to be able to work around that. You have to be able to find ways to have those impromptu idea sessions or brainstorming sessions with everybody involved as well. It's much harder if 2 people are having a conversation and then you walk over to another person's desk, bring those in. You can't do that quite as easily remote, so you have to be very intentional about how you go about that. That plays into then making sure that everybody is getting equal contribution. You want to make sure that you're having one-on-ones with every person on the team, that you're checking in, that people know they're on the same page and are having equal opportunity to contribute to the project. And then team building. It's easier to work with people when you know them, when you have a relationship, you know their personality, likes, dislikes, you have shared hobbies. It just makes it much more pleasurable to work together, easier, you know how to handle conflict better. And so you have to be intentional about building a team even when you're not co-located, which we'll talk about a bit later. And then time zones. Again, there's no way around this. Time zones can be a challenge. There are ways to manage that though, and so again, we'll look at that down the line. And then here is sort of the flip side of the buffer survey on the individual level. So these are the biggest struggles when working remotely. You'll see the tie there at the top with loneliness, isolation, and then collaborating and communicating with the rest of your team. So staying productive, it can be a challenge. And this is where if you are someone that has a very hard time being a self-starter, staying focused on your own, maybe remote work isn't for you. But even for those that do, you have to be very intentional about staying on task, staying disciplined, and having a routine so that you can stay productive. It's really important to have boundaries when working remotely. If you don't set clear boundaries and expectations for when you're going to be online, for where you're going to be working, and when you're going to stop working for the day, it's very easy to just work constantly. You'll wake up in bed, start working, you'll go out to the couch, start working, work all night, and that's not what you want. You want to have a better work-life balance, not a worse one. And then isolation. Again, this is very real. If you're not in an office, you might go days at a time sometimes without talking to other people in real life, especially nowadays with things like shipped groceries and everything being paid online, automatic banking. There's not a lot of reasons to leave your home office sometimes. And so you have to figure out how much personal interaction is right for you and then make sure that you're seeking that out in other ways. And then finally, this one is kind of funny and trivial, and yet it's a surprising number of days where this is my biggest frustration of working remotely, is that you don't get perks like the free coffee and the snacks and the catered lunches. So not a deal breaker by any means, but sometimes it can be frustrating. So we looked at the benefits, we looked at the challenges then that can kind of get in the way of those. How do we then overcome these challenges and develop an effective team? So communication is key. I think this is probably the number one most important thing. If we can't communicate well as a team when we're spread out, none of the other stuff is going to work. So when we're communicating, we want to set expectations. We want to know, what is the default mode of communication for certain types of issues? When are people going to be in the office? What happens if I ping someone and they don't get back to me right away? You want to work all of those out and be upfront with those from the beginning. If you bring someone new in, you want to talk to them through those processes from the beginning so that everybody knows what to expect. Again, you want to be intentional. If you want to brainstorm, you want to bring everybody in on that so that people aren't getting left out. You need to make sure that everybody is having regular one-on-ones with a manager so that issues can be resolved and so people don't become invisible to the organization. This is all stuff that can happen pretty easily in an office setting, but you have to be very intentional about doing it when isolated. And then you want to embrace different forms of communication for different things. So you want to learn when to use an email, when to use a chat, or video, or when to send some screenshots, or maybe a screen recording of issues you're having. All of these different forms of communication have their place, and learning to use those effectively in your team can have a huge boost to productivity. So when setting expectations, async communication is going to be key. You don't know if someone is at their desk. So when you send a Slack message off, you don't know if they're going to get that now, 2 minutes from now, 10 hours from now. So there has to be an expectation of asynchronous communication. With that then can come core hours. There's always going to be cases where you do want a more immediate response. And so if you have an idea of core hours where everybody is going to be more or less working and at their desk, maybe not strictly at the desk the whole time because you have to go to the bathroom, you have to get food, you have to answer the doorbell, but core hours where the communication is going to be a little bit more immediate. That can then help you to plan out the difference between I need to just ask this very general question, it's not time sensitive, or I need to know the answer to this now or we can't ship today. And you can balance that out by setting that expectation. And then again, you want to define where communication happens. You want to know where you should be asking and documenting requirements for a feature, or where some design questions are, versus where do I ask where we're going to go for lunch next week when I'm in the office? Because those are very different, and you don't want to pollute the different communication channels and make it harder to find the crucial information when you need it. Again, being intentional is very, very important here. And when you first start, or when your team is first adopting these policies, I think it's very easy to feel like you are over-communicating, but I think that's actually a good thing because so much communication happens naturally without a lot of effort in the office. When you have to make that effort very explicitly, remotely, it feels like you're over-communicating. But after a while, that becomes the default, and over-communicating actually feels very natural, and you realize that you probably were under-communicating before. When you are documenting things thoroughly, when you are asking questions in the proper channels and going through all this, it keeps everybody on the same page, and it's much easier to know what's going on, and actually reduces the amount of chats or meetings that you have to have because people can look that information up on their own. You want to document and share your work as well. And again, we should all be documenting and sharing our work, but it's a lot easier to do, and if you aren't doing that in person, you can kind of let it slide a little bit more. If you're remote, you want to let people know what you're working on, what progress you are in that stage. What are your questions? And you want to do this very proactively because you might not get an answer right away. If you were trying to ship something at the end of the week and you leave all your questions to Thursday, they might not get answered asynchronously by Friday when you want to release. So updating that regularly can really help be productive throughout your week and not get blocked by things. And then, again, you want to share questions, concerns, ideas. You want to make sure that you are voicing your opinion and that you aren't invisible to the rest of the org. Different mediums. Escalate things when needed. Use video, emoji, images where appropriate because they give you so much more context. You always put a face to the video as well. We lose so much from nonverbal cues being gone. So anytime that you're in a chat or anything like that, you want to be having a face to the video. And also, if you're sitting down in a chat with people, try and find a quiet spot. Both when you're in the office, if you have people that you're trying to find a room for, find a quiet spot to call in from. And again, if you're at home, try and have a quiet spot. Don't always be out at the loud coffee shop or in the middle of the city, or if you can help it, try and put the barking dog outside if you're trying to have a chat so that those background noises aren't distracting everyone. Engagement. Again, like I said, remote employees need to be first-party citizens. You need to have total buy-in from the team and organization that we're going to treat this and support it well from day one. And we want to have group involvement. So this means everybody in the team should be syncing up with each other in some form or another. Even if it's not a direct report, if it's just a coworker at the same level as you, you want to chat with them regularly, build that relationship. And again, with your manager, you want to be having those one-on-ones. You also want to encourage casual conversation. Again, so you can build relationships. You can build in sort of the coffee machine time, water cooler talk, where you are just learning about each other and maybe starting to kick off some of those brainstorming sessions. And then schedule time to chat as a team. Whether this is time to chat about a specific feature-related thing or a planning session, or maybe this is just time to chat casually as an entire team. Make time to discuss and have those brainstorming sessions as well. This can be really good to actually just have something regularly to just chat about what is on everyone's mind, what should we be working on, what ideas do we have. And value and seek input from everybody. It's very easy to be quiet and kind of invisible when you're just a floating head on a monitor somewhere. So if you're a manager, or even if you're not a manager, and you're just aware of this, that someone isn't speaking up, maybe ask them about this in private first, but then really make sure that you're getting feedback from everybody in these sessions so that nobody is getting left out. And then always make sure that when you're having important discussions, try to have them in groups when you can. Don't do important things privately in one-on-ones and leave people out. And if you can't help that, document it and make sure it's known to everybody after the fact in some other fashion. Team building, super important. Do it casually online through conversations. Team onsites is another really big one where you can actually bring everybody together, hopefully once a year, a couple times a year if possible, and get out of the office, do things together, and build those relationships so you can work more effectively together. When you're remote, this could also be things like just weeks where you're getting out of the norm and doing shared activities. So maybe this is a hackathon, maybe you're taking on tech debt together, but just something where everyone can come together on a single specific task for the week and kind of have that shared experience. This could also be things like weekly lunch and learns remotely, or meeting up at conferences or other industry events where, again, you can get together and get to know each other better. Building connections is huge as well. And part of this is because, when you are working in a team, you're going to have disagreements. There's always office politics that can come into play. And so you want to assume good intent, assume that people are on your side and that, they have their back, especially in a manager relationship, and especially when that manager is your main lifeline to the rest of the org. And you want to protect that one-on-one time with a manager as well so that you have opportunities to voice concerns. But you also want to make yourself visible to others so that other people know what you're working on and can see what you're doing. And you want to build relationships with those people and hopefully have other allies on other teams so that if you have problems, you have a place to go. And then you want to have workflows in place. So you want to plan, document, update your requirements as you're going so that it makes it very easy for people to see what you're working on and what the status is. When you're doing design and code review, blend asynchronous communication with video review. If you need to give context to something, jump on a chat and then review it after the fact. Don't let yourself get blocked in chatting if that's not the most effective medium to have the current conversation. Pair programming. A lot of people wonder how this can work remotely, and honestly, with technology, if you have good video chat software, if you have screen sharing, you can sit down and still pair program. You can bounce ideas around. Maybe one person is looking something up while the other person is writing the code. Like, this can still work very effectively. Especially, if, like I said, you can screen share, and then the other person can maybe annotate on your screen to point certain things out. You can reduce a lot of the friction that often can come up. QA, another one. If you're working with a QA team, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Video is even better. Like, there's lots of ways to help make it more self-documenting what an issue is. If you just say, hey, there's an issue on this screen, I have no idea what that means. If you send me a video that maybe is annotated or even has your voice behind it, very easy to understand what's going on, and then you can get about fixing that issue. All right, I'm going to go quickly then through some tools. A lot of these probably aren't a surprise. Big one is internet is your lifeline. If you're working remotely, you want fast internet. You also might want a hotspot. So we have tools, Slack, Hangout, Zoom, shared documents. So Google Docs, Sheets, Forms are all really great. Visor, if you want to share your device, is huge. Another nice tip here is if you have meeting software like Google Calendar, auto-add conferences to those so that you can immediately jump into a group chat when that meeting comes. Planning and documentation, Jira, Trello, GitHub Issues, Confluence, GitHub Wiki, document processes, have clear requirements, update the status. When requirements change, update that. Make sure people can know what you're working on and how much you have to go without having to directly ask you every time. Code and design, GitHub, GitLab, Envision is great for design. All of these support asynchronous feedback. Secret sharing, things like keys, Gradle configurations, all this kind of stuff. You're not in person, you can't just hand over the sticky note anymore. So have something like LastPass or Dashlane where you can share these in a secure place with everybody. World Time Buddy, this one's actually huge. If you're working across time zones, being able to quickly translate what those are can be a big time saver. Doodle or Slack polls for quick, non-important things. Where are we going to go to dinner at the on-site, or what would be everyone's preference for a way to meet? Or even things that don't sound all that fancy, but again, QuickTime for a video record or a screenshot can be really beneficial. So, like I said, preemptive FAQ a little bit here. One question we get, do you work in your pajamas every day? Sometimes, but it's not the best way to go about it. I really encourage people, and I have to remind myself that it's really good to have a routine, get dressed, be professional as much as possible, and actually that will help you get into that routine, stay in the routine, and be more productive. How do you manage working across time zones? Well, this can depend a lot on the time difference. So you want to define working hours, and what that means might be different whether you're 2 or 3 hours apart versus 12 hours like we are with our developer in India. You're going to want to embrace asynchronous communication. And you're going to want to set expectations kind of the responsibility of who is going to have to stay up late for a meeting or who is going to get up early. And this is where it helps to know people. If you know that someone is a night owl and they don't mind staying up late because it's not really out of their day, then maybe that becomes more of the default. But you want to also sort of have empathy towards, situations are changing. Maybe someone has in-laws in town and you just want to be flexible with what these expectations are going to be. And then one nice thing is time zones can be a challenge, but they're also an opportunity. If you're 12 hours apart, that means you have a 24-hour development cycle. You can be developing features, then pass that off for testing or review, and then when you wake up in the morning, it's ready to go, it's ready to ship. This is great if you're tracking down bugs as well. So you can actually turn this into a good thing. How do you stay productive when not in the office? Be disciplined, build a routine, get ready, start and end at the same time so you have those boundaries. A dedicated workspace is hugely beneficial. And then when you are working, when you're in a video chat with people in a meeting, be focused and present. Don't be surfing the web behind. Don't be playing video games while pointing the camera at your face. Again, be professional, be engaged. And if you are getting distracted, change venues. That can help. Do you get lonely working from home? Yes, if you are someone that needs that interaction, so be mindful of what your requirements are for that, and then build relationships online in local communities, change venues, be it a co-working space or coffee shop. All of those things can really help. So, working effectively across space-time, working in these remote teams, different locations, different time zones, it's awesome, or it can be, but it doesn't happen by accident. There's a lot that goes into it. You want to communicate very intentionally, build engagement among your team, develop policies and workflows that support it. And if you do all that, then it might just be how you want to spend the rest of your career. So thank you very much. If you want to chat more, you can find me on the interwebs at N8 Ebel, and I'd be happy to chat with you more today. Thank you.